Welcome to Pratidhwani, where we try to humanize science. I'm your host, GV Pawan Kumar. It's my absolute delight and pleasure to introduce you to my guest on this episode, Siddharth Talur. Sid, whom I'm going to call Sid on this particular episode, is an associate professor at the Department of Electrical Engineering at IIT Bombay. He's a faculty in charge of the Vadvani Electronics Lab. Sid also has had a illustrious career. He has been to IIT as a student, and now he is a faculty member at IIT. And in between, actually, of course, he took a detour into US, did his PhD in the US. We're going to ask how and when that happened, and what was his pathway. And interestingly, Sid has been involved in some very fascinating research, including MEMS and also a lot of interesting aspects related to sensing. Nowadays, he's also moved into the healthcare related sensing and very fascinating aspects of looking at this problem, both from an academic viewpoint and also as a startup co-founder and the director of Nirik Sense Technologies. With this kind of very short introduction, I'm going to pick Sid's brain more to really learn how and why he does what he does. Welcome to Pratidhwani, Sid.
Yeah, thanks, Pawan. Thanks for having me.
So, Sid, tell us a little bit about your origins. Where were you born, and what was the kind of education you had?
Right. So I mean, like you said, I was briefly in the US, but other than that, I've always been in Bombay. So yeah, I mean, now we call it Mumbai, but I still refer to my city as Bombay. In fact, I think I had heard this quote from someone. They said I was born in Bombay, but I became successful in Mumbai.
Nice.
So yeah, I kind of relate to that. So yeah, I was born in Bombay. I did my schooling in Bombay. It was in a school that was very close to where I lived, Jayabin Fourth School, not maybe very well known outside of Bombay. And then I finished schooling. I joined. So I was in the state board. So we have this concept of up to 10th standard in one school, and then we do what is called as junior college here. So for junior college, I was at DG Ruparel. There I did science, and in 10th standard, I mean, you had all the compulsory subjects, right? So in Ruparel, I was in what we called as a vocational training
Ah,
uh, kind of program. Essentially, it means that you can take up a subject other than the compulsory subjects. I took it because it did not require me to do a second language and biology for 12th. And at that time, I was very focused on doing this JEE preparation. So
hmm.
I chose electronics, not knowing what is electronics. I just happened to get electronics, a seat in electronics at Ruparel. That's why I took up electronics. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that it happened that way because it worked out for me later. I really enjoyed electronics at that time. So then I cleared JEE. I had developed this liking for electronics. So I wanted to take up electrical or electronics engineering. Um, I, for some reason, wanted to go to IIT Kanpur at that time because of course, these were all second and third hand information, but somehow I had this impression that if you have to do electrical engineering, you have to study at IIT Kanpur. Otherwise, there's no point in studying electrical engineering. That's what I used to think at that time. Um, but thankfully, a lot of people told me that no, IIT Bombay is also not a bad place for electrical engineering.
Okay.
And why would you want to move to another city? I mean,
Yeah,
you'll be
yeah.
close to your parents. So I'm glad I took that advice. So I joined IIT Bombay, did my BTech here in electrical engineering, and then worked in a bunch of different roles. Uh, I mean, I kind of specialize in making drastic jumps in my career. There's no kind of small jumps or kind of making related moves. So after my BTech, I joined a consulting company, a management consulting company for a year. So that was very brief. That was also in Bombay. This company at that time they were called AT Kearney. Now they go by just Kearney. So I was at Kearney for a year, and then, like I said, I do drastic jumps. So then I left that and went for a PhD to Cornell,
Hmm.
also in electrical. There I worked a lot in MEMS and optics. And I remember we first met because of
Yes.
that optics
Yeah.
connection.
Connection.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Yes.
did that, then worked at Analog Devices again in the US briefly for 3 years. That was on MEMS products, so that was not as much of a drastic jump.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came back to India in 2016. So I joined IIT Bombay. I was looking at a few different options, and then I settled on IIT Bombay, and I've been here since then. So it's been, yeah, more than 8 years. That's the longest I've been at a place. Yeah, so it's yeah, that's where I am now.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Sid, I want to just kind of go a little bit deeper into your formative years, especially in the context of your education. Uh, Education generally happens both inside a school and also outside. Tell us a little bit more about these two parts of your education.
Yeah, so when I was in school, right, so up to 10th standard, I was a very good boy. So I was taught that you have to study and do well in exams. So that's what I did. I mean, that was, there was nothing other interesting aspect in my life maybe at that time. So yeah, I mean, 10th standard, I broadly call it 10th standard. What I mean is my kind of schooling until 10th standard was in a small school, like I said, that was very close to my home. I mean, that was the reason I suppose my parents sent me there. Not, I mean, not a very, it wasn't a school where you would get a lot of experiences,
Mm, mm,
exposure. We never participated in any competitions outside. So it was a nice and comfortable life. I was surrounded by friends who also lived in buildings close by, so we would
mm,
kind of play with each other in the evenings and so on. So it was a nice life. I think um, where kind of my where I am now kind of started taking shape was maybe when I went to fifth standard. So we had this primary school, which is 1 to 4, which was run in a different building in the same school, and there were different teachers for those sections. And then fifth to 10th, which was secondary school, was run in a different building, and there were different teachers for those
mm.
sections. So when I went to fifth standard, we had very good science teachers. So there were two teachers, Alka Miss and Mary Miss. They were
Mm,
very, very good. Good in the sense they, I think, had some kind of desire that the student should do more than just read from textbooks and pass exams. So they would always encourage me to participate in some science fair or something that would happen locally in Borivali. So my childhood was in Borivali in Bombay. So they would keep pushing me, and I think it took me some time to warm up to that. But then, like I said, I mean, I was a good boy, so I would do whatever I was told. So I would go and participate. And then I started enjoying it. These were, I mean, just fairs where you would kind of set up some science experiment, go demonstrate, talk about it, etc. And one of these teachers, she found out that there is this thing called NCERT, and NCERT has textbooks that are much better than the state board textbooks that we were using. So she would loan NCERT textbooks from a library close to her house and bring them to me. So
Nice.
those things were really nice. I mean, I really appreciate now that I got those opportunities. I never asked for them, but I'm so
Mm,
happy they did that for me. So that kind of made me realize that what I'm learning is this textbooks is very, very limited. I mean, the 10th standard, or not 10th standard, but the state board textbooks that we had were very kind of minimal. I can understand why now. I mean, it's a huge educational system, and students from all kinds of backgrounds are in those schools. So not everyone may have to go on to become an engineer or a scientist, right? But the system was maybe designed to cater to the lowest common denominator. So you should at least have a good lifestyle, right? After you graduate, you should know enough so that you can take care of yourself. So now I appreciate that maybe the curriculum was designed with that in mind. But at that time, I did not understand. So I used to feel that what kind of schooling system have my parents put me into, where there is nothing to learn. So I would really then try and seek out opportunities. So closer I got to 10th standard, I myself would seek out more opportunities to learn or at least get different exposures. And my teachers at that time were very helpful in that sense. When I came to 10th standard, I joined a coaching institute. I mean, like every student does, I suppose. Um, this was again one very small institute in Borivali, but the principal of that institute, this Professor Ram Upadhyay, so we called him Upadhyay sir. He was very nice. So he encouraged this critical thinking. I mean, he never used the word critical thinking, but now I can understand that what he was teaching us was critical thinking. And he would say, just question something. I mean, if you don't like or if you don't follow why something is being done in a certain way, just question it and try to find answers and ask questions until you get answers. So that kind of thinking for me was a very new thing because I mean I was in a upbringing where you don't question your teachers or your elders. So that took me some time again to kind of warm up to that way of thinking. But yeah, I mean I suppose that and this kind of science was one way in which I was encouraged to kind of think outside the box. I was not kind of pushed in any other disciplines to think that way. So maybe my growth happened in thinking critically using science. I mean, so science was an excuse to kind of think critically. Yeah, so that that was nice, and I think that theme has continued throughout my career. After this 10th standard, I mean, when I was doing this 10th standard, there was also this maths Olympiad. So my mom is not a scientist, and she and I think very differently. And maybe the older I've grown, maybe the more our way of thinking has diverged. But what I appreciate about what she used to do for me then, I mean, even then, it's not like our thinking was very completely aligned, right? I was a teenager who rebellious, right? Parents don't know what is good for me, kind of person. But what my mom would do is just try to find out again ways in which I could do better. And she found out that there is this thing called Maths Olympiad, and she would go and enroll me for these entrance exams. So I kind of dabbled in mathematics for a little bit at that time. I never made it to the national level training. I could not go to the international Olympiad, but I did, I think, go with, I think I cleared the state and went to the national somewhere there.
No.
So
Okay,
that's where
nice.
my Olympiad journey stopped. So I remember this moment. So there's one friend of mine who later, so he was also in this maths Olympiad. I think his parents also pushed him there similarly. And we had no idea what, I mean, what life is, what we want to do with our life. We were anyway very young kids at that time. I remember this moment. We had just written this maths Olympiad test for the state to national and bombed it. Both of us had bombed it. And we were on the train back to our homes. And this guy asked me, so what next? Because it was like this sense of purpose, like this Maths Olympiad was something that was filling this gap because both of us were from the state board and there was nothing to look forward to in the state board. So this Maths Olympiad was giving us a sense of purpose. So I remember we were on this train back home and he asked me, now what next? Now Maths Olympiad is over. And I said, I don't know, maybe we'll find something. And he said, my mom was saying there is something called IIT. That looks like something which people study for. So I said, okay, I've never heard of this IIT. And I went home and I was telling my mom that this friend of mine was talking about IIT. She said, yes, I also read in newspaper there's something called IIT and looks like there is coaching for IIT. So maybe I will see what we can do for IIT coaching. So I think after I finished my 10th, she went and enrolled me in a coaching center. Uh, I had no idea I did not even know IIT was an engineering college. I just knew IIT is an entrance exam. This Maths Olympiad has finished. I did not make it past that stage. So maybe now I target IIT. And then there was another friend of mine, Ketan, who lived in the building next to ours. So he was studying for JEE as well. And my mom found out that, oh, there is another boy in our colony who's studying for JEE. Anyway, this guy and I were very good friends. So she said, oh, you ask him. And I mean, he was a very good mentor. I mean, a very good friend and also a very good mentor, about the same age. But he just happened to be taking JEE 1 year before me. So he kind of really told me what is IIT, what is engineering, what is this JEE, what are physics, chemistry, and maths. I mean, why are they so interesting? I mean, that period was very, very transformative for me. I then started realizing that, okay, maybe these are subjects which I enjoy anyway. I like thinking about things in this manner, and looks like you could make a career out of it. I had no idea because I was surrounded. So in my family, it was mostly bankers,
Hmm.
and I had not had much exposure. I mean, even some of my cousins who got into engineering were getting into engineering much later, and when they were moving to the US. So in my mind, going to the US was maybe something which one has to do later in life. But what is engineering? What can engineering really offer you as a career option, etc.? I started realizing at that time. Um, yeah, so I mean, then one thing led to another. I mean, I cleared JEE, I came here, I had a very good time at IIT. At IIT, I think is really where I was surrounded by all kinds of people, all kinds of very, very sharp, very
Hmm.
bright people, because I did not get a lot of that until then in my schooling. So it was quite intimidating at first, because suddenly I was not topping exams anymore. Suddenly I was kind of bottom of the class in some of the subjects. So it was quite intimidating, but it was a very good experience, because you have such bright people, such competition, but also a lot of friendship. So I started realizing that competition and friendship can coexist. It kind of need not be one or the other. And also students from all kinds of families, different ways of thinking, different ways of living, different kinds of opinions. Um, Took me a long time to reach a stage where I started understanding that it's okay to have a different opinion, and it's okay
Hmm.
to not have to change that opinion. Meaning I need not change mine, you need not change yours. It took me a long time to realize that. But IIT was my real first exposure to being in such a system. Um, After IIT, I'm giving a long answer to a maybe
Yeah.
short
No, no, no.
question.
This is good because
Yeah.
this is a kind of actually, evolution which is very important to capture because it is also kind of partly a oral history archive, small part of it. One of the
Sure.
very crucial elements, Siddharth, which I also noted down was you mentioned a very interesting phrase, sense of purpose.
Mm,
You know, if you actually really think of it. It's something which is very, very crucial for all stages of anybody's career. You know, what really motivates you to really go and do something is that strength, sense of purpose. In fact, it drives all of us in one way or the other. And you are now talking about something right at the formative years. That is one point I would want to learn a little bit more. The second point is the engineer in you, because the kind of work you do, where you're
mhm.
really hands-on and you also like to interface with teams and also, influence and not only just bring in new ideas, as you mentioned in many of your posts and also places that you'd want to actually do the execution part of the idea. It's an excellent way of developing an academic interest and taking it out. Uh, I would want to just know a little bit about this kind of thinking. Was it already prevalent when you were growing up, or this is something you developed later on? Because you do mention that you got exposed to very good people in IIT, but everything sometimes, at least at a psychological level, sometimes you also bring in your own individual, and then you amalgamate that with the environment, and then the individual grows forward. I'm
Yeah.
just curious to know about those things because that is one fascinating aspect of your work, which I felt there is a lot for many of us to learn about. Could you please just tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly. So, yeah, I mean, I think all of that happened kind of much after IIT.
Hmm.
So, in IIT, I think my thinking really broadened, right? So I really started thinking outside the standard template. So that was when I started thinking, I mean, what would really I want to do with my life? And we had at IIT as a student, there were even at that time there was a lot of exposure to many different kinds of careers, different
Mm.
opportunities. Um, so in I think I don't know why I to so by the time I was graduating, I kind of got disillusioned with engineering. I don't exactly remember why that happened, but there was a stark difference between my maybe first 3 years as a student at IIT and my last year at IIT. So first 3 years
Oh,
at
is it?
IIT, yeah, I was anyway kind of doing whatever it took to get a good GPA,
Mm.
very kind of bookish, knowledge pursuit, if you will. Last year, I think I felt maybe I was uh, doing that with no real kind of underlying reason, or at least I was not, meaning I could not understand why I was living my life that way. So maybe I
The
kind
sense
of
of
went,
purpose question then.
yeah. So I think that originated there. Yeah. So I remember maybe kind of it was very new and I overreacted to it. So maybe last year I consciously remember I did not make any attempt to do well in academics. I looked
Mm,
for courses where I could have an easy time and learned how to play the guitar, started doing a lot of gaming. So I
mm, mm,
guess I was trying to enjoy life a little bit more. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I was necessarily made to understand that engineering can be a satisfying career option. That
mm,
was not very clear to me. And also, this was an age where you are very easily influenced, right? So I was surrounded by my friends and who were also not that keen on engineering. So we felt, oh, maybe there are better opportunities in business. I mean, certainly more money, but also very exciting. Engineering sounds very boring. That's what we used to think. So then I was preparing for this campus placements with that point in my mind. So I think that worked out. I joined this consulting company, like I said. I also wrote the CAT exam.
mm.
I got interview calls. I did not feel like going for the interviews to any of the IIMs. Um, yeah, but that's where I was at. So I was starting to question what is the sense of purpose? Why? I mean, what is my life for? And I thought maybe consulting will give me an answer. Uh, so unfortunately, this was 2008. So my job in consulting started in July 2008,
Mm.
and this was the year when Lehman Brothers collapsed. There was this
Collapse.
whole banking crisis, right? So and I was in a management consulting company, so their clients were not doing very well, so they did not have a lot of projects. So
Coincidentally, I
I
should
was
mention. Coincidentally, I should mention that I was in US. I arrived in US then, right
oh,
when this
okay.
was happening. It was very. Obama was just getting into the election. He had just won. He had not taken the office. I arrived in 2008 winter. Yeah, that's the
Okay, okay.
thing.
Yeah, so very interesting times, right? I mean, there have been so many crises since then, but going through one yourself is something else. So yeah, so I mean the colleagues were very, very nice, but there was no work to do, so it was very boring. And we would kind of keep ourselves busy by having discussions in office, and whenever there were some projects, people would kind of scramble to get those projects. So it was not very exciting. So I felt that, I mean, look, I came here thinking this will be exciting, but this is just even more boring. And there were meetings where you would discuss what color scheme we should use in these PowerPoint slides. And you would spend a lot of time discussing that. So I felt, okay, this is definitely what I don't want to do. I mean, I understand that there will be moments in any career where you have to do things which you may not particularly enjoy, but that was not very enjoyable. Maybe it would have been different if it was not that year. Maybe when there are projects, it would have been more exciting. But unfortunately for me, I happened to be there during that time, and it was quite boring. And then again, I was questioning now what, because
Mm,
I
mm.
thought this is a good escape, but it turned out to be even worse. And then what had happened when I was in IIT was we had this concept of doing an internship after your third year. Now, I mean, now also students do it, but now there's no credit for it. So we had a credit. I mean, it was a pass-fail type of credit, but doing an internship was compulsory.
Mm.
And at the end of the summer, you had to produce an internship certificate to get the credit requirement met. So everyone would scramble for an internship at the end of their third year in IIT. And there was a lot of craze for going abroad, have a all expenses paid summer vacation. So we would all sit and spam faculty. I get a lot of that spam now. So I feel very bad about doing that back then to others. But yeah, I used to spam faculty with my resume saying, I'm very interested in your research and I would really like to join your lab for a couple of months. And don't know how many emails I sent. I sent hundreds, but one responded. One professor from Cornell University responded. She said, "Okay, you can come join my lab in summer." So I had spent summer of 2007 at Apsel,
Mm,
Alisa Apsel's lab at Cornell, and there I had a good time. Meaning I enjoyed the work, I enjoyed the people I was with. So when I was disillusioned at Kearney, I felt why don't I maybe think of going to Cornell because at least
mm,
I felt happy there, right? For the short time I was there. So I wrote to Apsel asking if she would be interested. She immediately replied saying, yes, please come.
mm.
And then I came home from office one day and I told my parents I'm going to apply for PhD in the US. Um, so they said, okay, fine. I mean, they were used to my drastic decisions by then.
Yeah, you're telling it as though it is just a flip of a coin, but it is not,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So then,
Yeah.
anyway, so then I figured out, oh, there is this GRE you have to write and TOEFL. So did all of that. Anyway, I mean, because I knew Apsel, she had agreed. So I applied to Cornell. I applied to many other places, but then I joined Cornell for my PhD. Um, I had a good time. So I joined. So she said, "Why don't you join in summer? I mean, instead of joining in fall, why don't you join in summer? Because summer people will also be free. You can kind of get going very quickly. And anyway, you know the people."
Mm.
So I did that. So in my first summer of my PhD, working with others, I got 4 co-authored papers. So that I think
Wow.
was the most productive summer of my life, even until now. Yeah. So that was very nice. I mean that my PhD was off to a great start, right?
Mm.
Nothing better that one could have asked for. These were not first author, but
Yeah, yeah,
still, I mean,
yeah.
for a first year PhD, it's a great feeling. This was a circuit design group.
Mm.
So this was IC design, and I was very good at IC design. I took some courses there. I did very well in those
Mm.
courses. I was doing very well in this group as well. But I was not enjoying it because I see design and I mean coming to that sense of purpose again, right?
Mm.
So it filled some gap, right? I at least wanted to do creative work, which I wasn't getting to do in that job earlier. So at least that gap it filled. But I realized that there is this sense of autonomy that I enjoyed, which wasn't there because an IC design project is a large project. You need multiple students looking at many different aspects. So you really have to be a very good team player and kind of coordinate and get things done. I was not such a good team player at that age. So I started feeling very restricted in
Mm.
some aspects. And I wanted to pursue something more what is the word I want to use? Academic. I mean, little bit open-ended in my
Mm.
PhD, but that topic felt very well defined, and it was more about execution. Anyway, I mean,
Execution.
life has come full circle. Now I'm thinking like that. But yeah, at that age, I wanted something more open-ended where I could explore and so on. So then I wrote to this other professor. So in my summer internship, one of the guys I was staying with, whom I stayed with for that summer, was Suresh. He was working with Sunil Bhave, who
Mm, mm,
eventually was my PhD advisor. So at that time, during that internship, uh, Suresh had said, "Why don't you meet Sunil? He's a very nice guy, right?" And I had tried to meet him, but that summer I think he wasn't there, or something had happened, so I could not meet him. So I had written to him that I wanted to meet you, but I could not meet you. So when I applied for PhD and I got the offer from Apsel, I had written to Sunil saying, "Sorry, we had not been able to meet then, but I am joining Cornell, so I would like to meet you." And the first week I arrived at Cornell, I went and met Sunil in his office, and he said, "Oh, look, you have joined Apsel's group, so it's not a good idea to switch right now.
mm,
Why don't you first try what she has in mind, then maybe we can discuss." And I said, "No, no, maybe you have misunderstood. I'm not here to ask you if you would be willing to work with me. I mean, that was not why I came here. I am here to meet you because we could not meet last time."
Oh.
So I felt that was strange. I mean, why is he even suggesting that? But anyway, one semester into my PhD, when I was looking to move, I thought, okay, maybe let me ask him because he was very interested in having me as a student at that time. So I asked him, he was very excited, agreed immediately. But he said, "Look, I don't do circuits, I do MEMS." I said, "I don't even know what MEMS is." He said, "Do you understand mass spring damper?"
Mm.
I said, "Yes, that I understand. We did that in JE." He said, "That is enough." I mean, that if you understand that and if you understand circuits, you will understand
That
MEMS.
is
There
it.
is
Yeah.
nothing more than that. Rest is all rules. I mean, you
Mhm,
to etch things, you have to turn a tool on, run it for so many
mhm,
minutes.
mhm.
It's all rules. There is nothing to learn there. So that was I mean, that was good. It convinced me that, okay, maybe I can move. So I
Nice.
joined Sunil's group. What I liked always about him was
Mm,
this, what I just said, right? This utmost self-confidence. When I started working on my PhD, he had just started thinking of doing optomechanics.
mm,
And Suresh, who was the senior student, with whom anyway, a roommate of mine and a great friend. So he had just started doing optomechanics in Sunil's group. Sunil has no formal training in optics,
mm.
and we were just figuring it out. So Suresh was the first student, I was the second student who were doing optomechanics in his group. And I had never done an optics course in my life. Suresh had optics experience. Sunil also did not have optics experience, but I started appreciating. So through my PhD, I started appreciating that if you are confident and if you can get things done, you can succeed. You don't
Ex-
really need to kind of go through a formal training,
Yeah.
which has shaped the way I do things now.
Nice. Nice.
Um, and what I then started admiring about Sunil was this confidence and problem solving, right?
Mhm,
I mean, if you know that you have hit a roadblock in your research, you don't know how to handle that because you have never been trained on something like that. I saw how he operated and I realized there are different ways of solving problems. You can kind of collaborate with people, you can um, think outside the box, maybe you come up with a different approach. So my PhD ended up being something like that. So I was trying to make MEMS oscillators at frequencies that one would typically not think of operating them.
mm,
Silicon MEMS, capacitively transduced. Typically, people do kilohertz, hundreds of kilohertz, maybe few megahertz. I was trying to do gigahertz and to multiple gigahertz. And there, the hypothesis was, can we use light? Because maybe
mhm.
the capacitive is not a great transducer, but light optics has very good sensitivity. So
That's
can
it.
we
Yeah.
combine these two? So that was my PhD, and there again, I reached a point where I had to do some process innovation to solve a problem. So maybe I'll go slightly technical here. So I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
trying to make these devices with electron beam lithography
Mm,
to define the electrode gap. Like, so there's a resonator and then there's an
mm,
electrode for capacitive transduction. You want the gap between them to be as small as possible so you can do high frequency operation. And with electron beam lithography, the lowest I could go was more than 100 nanometers. So it was 150 or 130, something like that. And I had done some calculations and I figured out I need 50, like 50 to 80, somewhere in that range. 100 plus will just not do for the kind of things I was looking to do. And I had tried everything possible that I could think of trying and went to Sunil one day and I said, this just won't happen. I don't see how I can go below 100.
Mm.
And he said, why wouldn't you? So if you cannot etch it, why wouldn't you try and fill that gap? So once you have made a gap of 100, why wouldn't you go and try and fill something in there? And I was thinking, are you crazy? Because you have a released MEMS device. Now it is, you should not touch it, right? Because now everything has been done. Are you suggesting I should do any more post processing? So anyway, I mean, that was a crazy suggestion, but it was not that crazy to implement. So we discussed and we figured out a way of doing that. So eventually, I solved that problem. So what I realized is that you can solve really non-trivial problems, even though you may be outside your depth,
Depth.
right? So that is something I took. So I said, okay, I want to be like this. I mean, in my career, because that is neat, right? I mean, it's so unique and so neat. Um, then I went to analog devices. So the sense of coming back to your sense of purpose question. So
Mm.
this was all great. I mean, I got a PhD, but like I said, from the consulting job, when I moved for a PhD, I wanted this sense of intellectual satisfaction, right? Because that wasn't what I was getting in that earlier job. So that I got here. But okay, so let me tell you where the moment is very clear in my mind. So for my defense, I had to take a picture of my device, right, on
Mm.
the setup, because I want to show that, look, I did this experiment and here is all the fantastic data. And I had a lot of SEM micrographs.
Mm.
I was very good at taking SEMs. I had collected so many. So I had populated all my slides with that. And then I felt, okay, maybe I should also show the setup instead of just showing SEMs,
Mm.
just to show my committee that it's not just device fabrication, but there's also this whole instrumentation
Instruments.
that I
Yeah.
made. So I loaded the chip on the probe station and then I wanted to take a picture of the probe station. So with my phone camera, I took that picture. But then I realized, oh, I only got the probe needles and the chip in that shot. So then I said, okay, let me go a little bit back and try and get the
Mm.
laser also. So I went back, I got the laser, but then I looked at the picture and I said, oh, but the network analyzer is not in the picture. So I had to go all the way back. Then I kept going back and I run into the wall behind me, right? I cannot go back any further. And then I took that picture from there. So now at least everything was in my frame. That picture I used in my defense. But I was thinking, all my papers say chip scale oscillator, chip scale oscillator. This chip scale is a keyword in all my
Mm.
papers.
Mm.
But the experiment itself is a room scale experiment. It's not chip scale.
Chip scale.
So
Nice.
what am I talking about here? I say chip scale oscillator optomechanics will change the world. Will it really change the world? Um, and I started discussing all these things with some people, and that's when I realized that, okay, I mean, every technology you will make advancement. So maybe a key problem gets solved, then the whole community realizes that, oh, now this is a tool I can also use. So they all use and they kind of all reach the next stage. But then there are more problems to be solved,
Problems.
right? There
Yeah.
are really deep problems to be solved. And what I felt about optomechanics, which was happening at that time, was people were shying away from some of those really deep problems.
Mm.
So very good kind of academic pursuits and a lot of interesting papers were coming out at that time. But I looked at them and I said, I cannot see myself being happy in such a system where I know there is a problem, but I'm avoiding that problem, right? Or I know there is a problem, but I alone cannot do anything about that problem. The whole community has to be subscribed to do something about that problem. And I felt kind of, again, I overthought this maybe. I felt, oh, academia is so criminal, right? Why would you do work
Yeah.
like this? Why would you waste money, doing such type of work? So I said, no, then I don't want to be in academia. So I said, let me look for a job. There were a few options I looked at. Analog devices. Anyway, some of my PhD groupmates had graduated and joined analog devices.
Mm. Mm.
Sunil himself had a kind of appointment at analog
Mm.
devices. So he was spending some time at analog and some time at Cornell. So that was like a natural
Mm.
destination for me. My wife Kasturi also wanted a postdoc. and we were therefore looking at cities. So it was either Bay Area or Boston,
Boston.
and her postdoc at MIT worked out. My this thing worked out. So it was, I mean, a decision made based on that. Otherwise, there were some
Yeah,
options from the Bay Area, but the two-body problem would not have been solved.
yeah, I have to mention to the listeners and the viewers, Kasturi is Kasturi Saha, Professor Kasturi Saha. She's also a professor at IIT Bombay. I've also done a podcast with her in the past, and just for the information. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so then I went to analog, and that was really nice. I think uh, I was at analog for 3 years, from 2013 to
Mm,
2016. Lesser than the time I spent in my PhD, much lesser than the time that I've spent at analog device, sorry, at IIT Bombay now.
mm,
But those 3 years, I think, have really shaped uh, how I think and operate now. And something really fundamental changed in me in those 3 years. Because there again, I was surrounded by all kinds of right people.
mm,
And Analog Devices as a company pride itself in bringing out the best products. They are premium products. So you can find maybe other IC design companies that have cheaper ICs. But Analog would not compete in those markets if it can avoid that. So the emphasis was always on doing something really new and really challenging. So what I realized there, so I was in this great team at Analog Devices. I was in this MEMS product engineering team. So just a step back. So product engineering is like a dirty job,
mm,
is
mm,
how people perceive it because you have to solve problems. You don't get to do design. The attractive jobs are all the design jobs,
mm,
right? I mean, students, even I see that at IIT now, all the students who are inclined towards engineering want design roles because they
mm,
think that is where you can be creative. I differ. I
mm,
feel problem solving is where the real creativity comes out. Design, otherwise, you're doing template based kind of
mm,
creativity. So, problem solving, product engineering really gives you an opportunity to think outside the box. So I was in this MEMS product engineering team. So other product engineering teams at Analog typically hired master graduates, so MS or even undergraduate, like BS graduates for these roles. In this MEMS products team, I think the team lead of that group, Michelle, she had realized that problems in MEMS are so interdisciplinary that it's too much to expect a master's student to crack them. With a PhD, you have some more maturity, you have seen some multidisciplinary problems. So she had started hiring PhDs in that group. So I was in that group. And our group was tasked with leading the products and kind of making sure that they go from concept to market. But you are mostly kind of hands-on involved in the testing and maybe applications development, debugging, not directly involved in designing things. So that was very good for me because I don't think I would have enjoyed MEMS design because that again would have been early stage product development, very exploratory. So we would take ideas that would have cleared that stage. So technical risk has been de-risked to some extent. So you know that if there are certain specs, maybe this design can be used. And marketing has gone and looked for opportunities, and they say that, oh, if you can deliver such a product, there is this market waiting, right? So much revenue to be made. That's when our team would come in and they would say, okay, then let's propose a new product.
new product. Okay.
Yeah, and then you would kind of see it through till the end.
Mm,
So I was in that role. What that taught me is you can do research under constraints.
mm,
You can be time bound because when you're doing new product development in a company like Analog Devices, you cannot say I'll take 10 years to bring it to the
mm,
market because the market may go away by then, right? So in 3 years, you have to bring this product to market, but then the market opportunity is also not fully vetted out. So there are some assumptions. So you cannot spend infinite amount of money doing that. So looking at how big the opportunity is, maybe the management will give you some funding
mm,
to do the product development, and they'll tell you you have to do this in this much time, otherwise they'll kill your project. I realized how to operate in that kind of environment, which really helps me here now because I mean
mm,
our system is you have to think like that, right? We are limited resources.
Mm.
That happened. So that way of thinking really happened because I firsthand, learned how to do that, learned how to solve problems, how to design experiments, how to think through experiments and design them so that you're very optimally using money as well as time. So that really happened there. And I had a very good manager who really kind of taught me how to be professional. Because until then, in my PhD, my advisor is still a very good friend of mine. Our interactions were very casual. So I never learned how to operate in a professional environment. That I really learned at Analog Devices. How to communicate, how to handle conflicts, how to communicate properly. This was also in the US, so you have to learn how to talk to people from different cultures.
Cultures. Yeah.
So that was, yeah, that experience. I'm so thankful I had that experience. Um, so now you may ask if all was going so well, then what happened? Why did you come back to India
Yeah, yeah. I
and
was
that
just
to
about to
academia?
now. Yeah, yeah. Two questions: why to academia, and why come back to India? With this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
profile and experience, you would have probably easily kind of absorbed into the system there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember again, so I think this was 2014. So 2014 December, so Kasturi and I and a couple of other friends from our building, Arun and Preeti. So we used to live in this high rise in Cambridge,
Mm.
and we had a lot of Indian young married couples. So lots of friends in that building. So we would keep going out on day trips and so on. So this couple of friends of us, they're still very good friends. We meet them whenever they visit. We thought we'll go to Puerto Rico for Christmas because Puerto Rico is a short flight away
Yeah.
from Boston. So we booked that trip. We went to Puerto Rico. So on Christmas Day, we were sitting, I think, in the hotel pool. And then Preeti asked me, because Kasturi was thinking of maybe moving back to India,
Mm.
academics. I was quite happy in my job. So Preeti was asking me, are you guys thinking of moving back to India? And I said, I have this thing going so well for me here, so I'm not really thinking. But yeah, she has to, she's thinking, so maybe I will also have to think of something. But I don't think I'll go to academia because of the whole open-ended and this thing, right? Uh, but a couple of things happened. So in the project I was working in at Analog Devices at that time, there were teams from India also who were part of the product development team. I used to see that they were not doing the key kind of roles.
Mm.
Uh, that actually happened to be kind of the India office does very good products where they own the full product, but that wasn't happening in that line of products. And in MEMS, because my core training was in MEMS. So MEMS, there was no other country, so no other company in India where I could come and do MEMS in 2015. So I said, if I have to go in India and work at Analog, I cannot do MEMS. And I have become such a specialist in MEMS, I don't know if
Mm.
I can do anything else. Meaning, why would they hire a PhD to do, I don't know, audio processing when my training is in MEMS? So I started interviewing at different companies in the US just to see, am I good enough for other roles? And that was not very encouraging. Those interviews were not very encouraging. So I realized that, okay, I need to do a reality check here. I'm not as invincible as maybe I think I am. Um, so one good thing was so anyway, I used to visit India very frequently during my PhD and also while I was at Analog. And my parents are in Bombay, so I would always come to Bombay, and I made it a point to come to IIT Bombay
Mm.
just to meet people. And Udayan, who's a faculty here now, he was a Cornell graduate. He was very new at IIT Bombay at that time. So I did not know him, but I knew his PhD advisor and other friends, meaning other mutual friends who were PhD students at Cornell at that time. So I used to meet Udayan every time I came, and Udayan would tell me, "Why don't you guys apply to IIT Bombay?" and so on. So when I started realizing that, okay, maybe I have to think of India, I felt, okay, then let me think of IIT Bombay.
Mm.
So at that time, uh, in the US, I mean, it was all again second-hand information, right? So all us friends would keep telling each other, "Oh, India, you apply, it goes into a black hole. Maybe they call you for an interview, maybe they don't call. It takes so long, right? So we have to be very patient, etc." So 2015 Jan or some, yeah. So just after that Puerto Rico trip, right? We were coming to India. I thought, okay, maybe let me just reach out and see if I can give a talk and things like that. So I wrote to the department head, who was anyway, I mean, he had taught us when we were students here. So I wrote to him, I told him I'm visiting India, so I would love to visit the department. I'm also possibly thinking of a faculty position. So nothing committal, but I kind of indicated that. So he immediately wrote and said, "Yes, please visit. I will put you in touch with the faculty search committee convener who also had taught us when we were students." So this guy also wrote. He said, "No, no, when are you coming?" I said, "These dates." He said, "Yes, you come. I'll set up the interview." I said, "No, no, please take it easy." He said, "No, no, no, you just come. I mean, anyway, it's all people you know. Why are you so worried? Just come, give a talk, meet all these people." So I did that. And this was, I think, in Feb. And I asked them, so in the interviews and all, they would ask, right, when are you thinking of moving? And I would tell them, well, to be honest, I'm not even thinking of moving. I'm just exploring.
Yeah.
They said, oh, then why did you apply so early? I said, what do you mean? He said, no, you have applied now. So maybe in a month or so, you will have an offer if everything goes well. I said, I had heard, it takes what, 1 year, 2 years. He said, no, 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 who told you? It's not like that.
Yeah.
It's very, very quick. Things have changed.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine. Let's see. Maybe they're kind of just in front of me. Maybe they are behaving like this, but it may actually take a year. But then by May, I had an offer from IIT Bombay.
Wow. Okay.
And I also interviewed at ISC, IIT
Mm,
Madras.
mm,
But, and ISC also moved fast. So they also
mm,
gave me an offer in June. And Kasturi was the one who actually wanted to move back.
mm.
I was going to do this as a scoping trip because, like I said, I interviewed in other companies that wasn't going anywhere. So I was just trying to find out if I even have a chance here. And now I have two offers.
Mm.
And she is not even ready. I mean, she has not even written an application. She was nowhere
Oh
close to
man.
even thinking of applying, right? So I was not sure what I should do. So I asked ISC if I could uh, think about it for a very long time, and they said,
Mm,
no, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to give us an answer soon. I asked IIT Bombay if I can think about it for a very long time.
mm.
They said the offer is yours. You come whenever you feel like coming. You
Wow.
want to come next year, you come next year. So
Nice.
I felt that's really nice. I mean, that flexibility is really nice. So I accepted IIT Bombay and I told them I'll come at a later time. And then Kasturi started
Mm.
putting together her application, and then yeah, so I mean it worked out. So both of us then ended up here. I ended up deferring my joining by a year and a half since the time I had an offer because they were right. I mean, they did actually make it happen in a couple of years. I wasn't ready to come back that soon. Yeah, so I mean, I ended up here for that. I mean, mostly it was that that drove me to come here. I also wanted to be closer to my parents.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had been away for such a long time. Parent, sister, I mean, all my family was here. My cousins, I mean, the people my age were in the US, but then the
Yeah,
parents'
parents. Yeah.
generation was all here. So I was starting to miss that. I had missed so many weddings and all that. So I
Mhm.
was thinking of anyway, maybe entertaining coming back to India. So that happened. Now, since coming to India, that sense of purpose question came again because I had come here thinking that so I had some ideas in MEMS and related to optomechanics. Uh, well, now because I came to idea, I was academia. I was thinking I will have to be a little more open-minded again and entertaining slightly open-ended questions. Need not kind of focus so much on impact. So we started doing some of that, but the facilities here. I mean, I had never worked in academics in India before. I was
Yeah,
here as an
yeah.
undergraduate student. Most of my research career was shaped in the US. So my expectations on how things should be done
Mm,
and
mm.
what system should give you and what system should expect from you were very different from the reality here. Now I have been here 8 years. Now I'm kind of more accepting of this, and I know how to navigate this system. But
Yeah.
at that time, I was still very new, so this was not very enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a
So
challenge.
some of the
It's one of
ideas,
the major challenges actually of
yeah,
a
yeah,
movement. Yeah,
it
yeah.
still is. But I
It is,
think
yeah.
you can figure out. I mean, now that I've been here such a long time, I've realized you can navigate the system.
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
have to know how to navigate.
Yeah.
Which at that time, okay, one related to that point, and then I'll come back to the
Mm,
question. So, the support system is very weak,
mm.
right? So there are challenges. You have to navigate the challenges. You are surrounded by well-meaning people. It's not
People, yeah,
like the
yeah,
people
yeah,
around
yeah.
here are kind of not there to help you. They want to help you, but the system is set up in such an inefficient manner that the system is not set up to help you. The people want to help you. So if you work
Yeah.
with them, maybe you'll figure out how to solve those problems. Uh, but it slows things down. And
Yeah,
I mean, as you pick up tricks over the years, maybe you know what to do and what not to do in different
yeah.
situations. But when you're very new, unfortunately, that's a learning curve that you have to go through, which is a very difficult learning curve. So MEMS ideas of mine became a casualty of that learning curve. I anyway did not find any students who were inclined to work on those projects, but I was so at Analog Devices, I had anyway done these other type of things, right? I was in this systems dev or systems level problem solving type of thing, if you will. So here we had this Vadhvani Electronics Lab where we
Mm,
had done lab courses when I was a student. So I felt, okay, let me at least go there because I used
mm,
to feel happy working there as a student. So I used to go to the lab very often, interact with the staff. I knew all of them
mm,
because I would visit, and anyway, some of them were there when I was a student. So I saw that the lab staff are very keen to take up some projects, and
mm,
students are also doing these systems types of projects. So I said, okay, let me maybe start a few things here just to occupy myself while I deal with the MEMS ideas, kind of taking them off the ground. So I started some of that. Those things really took off. I had not
mm.
expected they'll take off in the manner they have taken off. And at some point, I think I just transitioned. I said that I really am not married to MEMS. So if this is working out, I am enjoying it, maybe I'll focus on doing these things instead. So that I think now I'm in a very happy place because I think I've really found it took me a long time to get
That,
here.
yeah.
But now that sense of purpose is there, it meets everything that I wanted, the creative thinking, the impact, um, what else, professional, all the things that I really wanted in my career, which existed in bits and pieces at different places. Now I've kind of seen them all
All
coexist.
questions. Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. This is actually a great kind of, example of how ideas, thoughts evolve over a period of time. The influence of course also is from the environment and yeah, one's own actually churning through that particular environment. Siddharth, I want to also just get a kind of gist about your current work, including the startup what you have co-founded. Tell us a little bit about that aspect, and it looks like a very interesting prospect. And then we'll go into your slightly more open-ended interactions on social media and other things. Yeah.
Sure, sure. I dabbled in a few different things since coming to IIT Bombay, but the couple of things where I am now very focused is one is the structural health monitoring,
Hmm.
like sensors. So I broadly work on sensor systems. I mean, that's how I call
Hmm.
myself now. But two tracks. One is the structural health monitoring, so physical
Hmm.
sensors, electromagnetics, ultrasonics, acoustics. Some of that started because of this whole MEMS
Hmm.
fascination. Um, the ultrasonics and acoustics started that way. The electromagnetics came later. And the other track is biosensing, where I'm really outside my depth because I never had any formal biology training, but now I have a biology lab that we have built because I have very good students and very good collaborators in both of these areas. So the biosensing, our focus has been on environmental sensing. So that work started in COVID-19. So we were one of the collaborators I was working with at that time out of Strathclyde, he was
Hmm.
saying, why don't we start looking at wastewater, looking for pathogen DNA in wastewater? because we had
Mm-hmm.
thought of doing some electrochemical work back then. So that really kickstarted all the biosensing work that we do for wastewater epidemiology, which is also going well. But the structural health monitoring is the one on which we have started this company, Nirixens Technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that also has a very funny origin story. Not the company. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
company kind of, I can talk about it later if you would like, but how I got into structural health. So I was doing this vibration sensors with a PhD student of mine. And then a faculty from civil engineering, Shavik Banerjee, who's a very good collaborator and also a co-founder for this company.
Mm-hmm.
He reached out. So he sent me an email one day that I'm in civil engineering and I read about your vibration work. Would you love to discuss? There are so many applications in civil engineering. So I visited. I was kind of immediately fascinated with his energy and ideas. And there was this imprint call for proposals
Mm-hmm.
open at that time. So he said, "Oh, should we apply for imprint?" I said, "I actually am submitting something on MEMS." There was a DRDO lab with whom I had discussed something at that time. So I said, "I'm submitting that." But sure, I mean, I'm open to submitting this also. Let's see where this goes. The MEMS one did not get accepted. This got accepted for funding. So that really started. But this proposal we wrote very quickly because he said, "Oh, deadline is in whatever few days from now." I'm so happy I took him up on that question because that has been really nice. So both of these areas we have been working for 5, 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
It's very enjoyable. I've had a very good bunch of people who have joined and worked on them. Yeah, and that one has led to the startup. The
Nice.
environmental sensing, we'll see where that goes. That's kind of a little bit open-ended. So
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
primarily use for my academic pursuits
Academic.
and yeah,
No, no, in
structural
fact,
health is where impact.
some of the questions, for example, wastewater kind of management aspect is very fascinating. In fact, it's
Hmm.
a very, very uh, important problem to actually look into. And there are also many
Yeah,
open questions, kind of interfaces with also basic science questions and things like that.
yeah.
Uh,
So I'm very excited about that.
yeah,
We'll
yeah,
see where that goes.
very, very fascinating. So, one of the key elements which in this kind of current age and times, especially in India, is the interfacing between the academia and the industry. This is actually a point which has been emphasized quite a lot, and it's become a kind of a very common discussion in various different conferences and other places too. Having been in this kind of interface, what has been your experience, Sid? And give us a little bit of feelers of what is necessary for this interface to grow and also probably fruitfully kind of come out with slightly more prominent impact
Hmm.
in your opinion. Yeah.
Hmm. So yeah, what I feel is academics gives you, or the academic environment gives you the space and time to kind of explore, right?
Mm,
So you can take a problem and just go deep as much as
mm,
you want to, just because you enjoy that.
yeah.
Industry, you cannot. Industry, there is always another problem to be solved. So
Mm,
you have
mm.
to solve one problem and immediately start solving
Step.
another problem, or you have to solve multiple problems at the same
Mm,
time. Um, so in industry, maybe the focus is on the short and near term. I mean, I would rather say the focus on the short and near term is clearer
mm,
than the focus on the long term.
yeah.
Uh, in academics, you can really make an impact in the long term.
Mm, yeah.
The short term, near term don't make sense because that's not the nature of problems that are compatible with our academic system.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what I think is happening in India is academics are being pushed to focus on the near and short term,
Mm.
and industry are being asked to
As
think
to
of the long term because I think the funding agencies seem to think that the long term is where the impact has to
mm,
be, and somehow impact can only happen from industry. The academics are only interested in publishing
mm,
papers, and they think they can get us to change our way of thinking in academia by making us focus on the short and near
mm.
term. And they say just collaborate with industry. Why don't you pick
Industry.
up a few tricks from them? I feel personally that having an ecosystem where industry can look at the near term and academia can look at the long term
Long
is
term.
more productive. And one of the ways certainly is that you could develop technologies in academia and send them to industry
Interesting.
so that they actually come out to market. But that is not the only way. I
Mm,
think
mm,
it has to be more than this transactional way of looking at things at the industry academia interface that we see. We need to do a lot more community building. I mean,
mm.
academics, we do a lot of conferences,
Huh.
we share knowledge with each other, we learn, right? It may not directly help your work, may not directly help
Yeah,
my work, but discussing with you somehow helps my work.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's a lot of that we can do with industry also.
Industries. Yeah.
It's easier said than done because they are, of course, more protective of what they
Mm,
do because they are there to make money and they don't want to get scooped. For us, getting scooped, maybe you feel bad for a few days and when you
mm.
get over it, maybe in
Oh,
industry, the impact is kind of more tangible.
moderate. Yeah, yeah.
But if we can somehow figure that out, I think there's so much that everyone can learn from each other. In the US, I would see that because even in analog devices, I would personally kind of interact with this one group at Binghamton,
Mm,
which was a packaging group. So there was a PhD student in that group who worked. So he was an intern. I was his supervisor at Analog for a short time. We were trying to solve some packaging problems at that time. So yeah, I mean, they were trying to do long term, like the analog devices team was trying to do long term also. They knew that
mm.
today we have a packaging solution, but we need a packaging solution 5 years from now where this won't work. And that type of work we were doing very closely with the University of Binghamton. So I think those type of things are missing here, where there's very close collaboration. If somehow we can make that happen, I think we'll start doing very well as a country.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a very, very kind of thoughtful answer, and there's a lot to actually also go forward and think about this in slightly deeper way. So as we come almost to the kind of end, uh, Siddharth, one of the key elements which I find, especially following you on social media, specifically on LinkedIn, which is a
Mhm.
platform which I have not been very active, but only recently I have also been actually looking into, and I found your writing and also your your thoughts on that particular platform very thought provoking and also very engaging, not only for young people but also people who are interested in kind of knowledge and understanding how the world works from a broader perspective. And this is something which I find a very important part of being an academic, because there is something which you can, as you mentioned, think about the long term, and also
Mhm.
kind of anchor those questions in the short term or in the contemporary aspect. So, what has led you to do this thing? Because I know you're also from an ecosystem where there'll be a lot of undergraduates and other things, but it doesn't mean that everybody who is in that platform or in that particular environment, like a professor, would want to do it. But I see that you engaging very, very kind of actively and also very in a very sensible way. I felt that. I'm just curious to know what drives you to do that particular thing.
So, I mean, like I said, when I was an undergrad student here, I developed this impression that engineering is not an exciting career.
Mm, mm,
And then I went about this meandering journey before coming back. Um, so I feel it's important to communicate with young people how, well, I should not say how to think, but it's important to communicate how we think
mm.
and also important to understand how they think
Yeah.
because they are a different generation. And I think it was the case with my faculty at that time when I was a student here. But there was never very strong communication. We never discussed things other than the subject that was being taught in class or grades and the like. Um, so I mean, it has been changing over the years. So now I do have very deep conversations with some of my students
Mm,
here in person also. But what I felt is at least some of these thoughts or perspectives that we have, which may not be what they think about, are important to be said. Uh, and maybe LinkedIn, so I don't use any other social media platform, but LinkedIn I find relatively more respectful and
respect. Yeah,
less
yeah.
toxic. So
Yeah,
yeah,
true,
so I
true.
have stuck with LinkedIn. It's changing, unfortunately, but let's hope
Oh,
it
is it?
doesn't.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. But let's hope it doesn't end up
Yeah.
becoming like the other platforms. But I felt that is one platform where at least you can document your thoughts. I mean, there are blogs. I mean, you have a blog. When
Yeah.
we were growing up, blogging was a big thing, right? All of us would read blogs,
Yeah.
write
Yeah.
blogs.
Yeah.
I think micro blogs are now more popular. Like
Now
this
more,
Twitter type of things are
yeah.
more popular. I don't think anyone has the patience to read blogs. But maybe write
I
blogs, but not read
yeah.
blogs.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
I hope not because I'm actually a very strong proponent of long form writing and other things.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No,
I
I
see
do
that.
enjoy reading those also,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
maybe the younger generation, I don't find that to
yeah,
be a lot of interest. So
yeah,
podcasting, I think what you're doing is great
yeah,
because
yeah,
that I
yeah,
think people do enjoy, and
yeah,
there's a lot of interest in different age groups. So I feel podcasting is maybe one way of getting thoughts across.
yeah, yeah,
LinkedIn is another. At least those who are active on LinkedIn, the professionally. I mean, unfortunately, it's not everyone. Only
yeah, yeah.
the people who are looking for maybe growing professionally or
Relationship. Yeah,
career change, they become active on LinkedIn. Uh, but I thought the kind of things I want to share may mean a lot when you are in that phase.
hmm.
So if I can just capture them there, and if it helps someone, I'll be very happy.
Wonderful.
But it things have to be shared. I also hope our students are able to share with us what they think,
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
they think. I mean, if they differ with us, it
Yes,
would be so nice, right? Because a lot of assumptions that we make may be not true
not true.
about them, and what they make may not be true also. We have seen the world, we have some experience which we can share with them. So I do this as one small way of kind of making that happen.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'd strongly recommend anybody who is actually listening or viewing this podcast to go and immediately connect with Sid. I'll be anyway giving all the links on the description and the show notes of the podcast. So Sid, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. I always have had a very interesting conversations, and also not just only about science, but also thinking about science and technology, and which actually are important aspects related to the pursuit of knowledge itself. Because there's a kind of a overwhelming, or rather an overarching philosophy related to all these things. We may call it as philosophy or otherwise, but not even having a philosophy is a philosophy in a way, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm very glad that you actually shared your kind of philosophical aspects of your own work. And that's one of the key elements of Pratidwani, to just bring out that intellectual history of a person and learn a little bit more about whatever they're doing. And also in process, kind of, share that knowledge with others who might find it useful, and in sometimes even motivating to take up something which is very different from what one is doing from our own way. So thanks again for your wonderful thoughts and time, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you actually.
Yeah, thanks, Pawan. Thank you so much.
This is Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science. This time with the one and the only Siddharth Thalu. Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you.